All right, guys, I want to talk about a few things. All right, but my focus today is going to be about Sharia law. Now, hopefully, you guys can read between the lines. All right, I'm going to present some things to you and just read between the lines regarding Sharia law and the fear mongering that has been happening for almost 3 decades, for 30 years, almost 30 years, since 2000. Now, check this out. First, there are no communities or cities in the United States under Sharia law. Doesn't exist. You know why it doesn't exist? Because the US prevents any religious law from being the basis of laws that apply to everyone. It's in the Constitution. It's not allowed. Sharia law can never be implemented in the US. No cities, no states, none of that. All right? It's in the Constitution. It's by law. So forget about what is Sharia law. Learn about it, okay? From an education. Maybe don't learn about it. But ultimately, none of that even matters because it cannot even be implemented per the Constitution. Can happen. Okay, now this is where I say the fear mongering is happening. The propaganda is happening. Why is that happening? Let's check it out, you guys. So in the year 2000, now this is a year before life changed forever here in America. Our national debt was $5.674 trillion. This is in 2000, okay? 5.674 trillion was the national debt. As of March 2025, the debt has skyrocketed to $36.22 trillion. Now, that's $31 trillion in that the debt has risen. The national debt has risen by $35 trillion. Where did that money go? It's kind of interesting because 2001, we had the invasion of Iraq, which was based on WMDs, which were never found. But oops, whatever it is, what it is. But since we're here, let's continue on. Now, in government, in 2025, Muslims are just 5. There's 4 Muslims currently serving in the Congress, okay? And that's all of the House of Representatives. All are members of the Democratic Party. Only 4. Okay, that's the representation of Muslims in Congress and Senate, etc. Okay, just 4. But you got to think about why the fear mongering, why this nonsense that's going around about Sharia law and all this other stuff. AIPAC has given over $100 million to just Donald Trump. Okay, that was for his campaign. Only one family has given that. Now you got to think, right? Why is a lobbyist that's representing one country with tons of dual citizen members, okay? Members in our government that are putting a foreign flag, singing a foreign national anthem, why would they do that, okay? Because what's happening is they're taking our tax money, putting the debt, the inflation on us, and in return, that money goes overseas, and then that money is going into the campaigns, into the pockets of our politicians. And that's where you hear the fear-mongering of Sharia law, because that justifies it. Everybody will now look and say, oh, keep that crap out of here. That's not good. And that's where the fear-mongering is coming in. But they are exploiting us, the middle class, the lower class. They are using our resources to privatize for them, for themselves, not the people, but it's going to privatize them. Here is the US inflation from the year 2000 to 2022. What do you notice here? The inflation has skyrocketed. That is the cost of living for us. Groceries, gas, utilities, everything has gone up. Why? Because we need to pay for that $31 trillion. That's on us. That's our bill, not their bill. The people that are making laws, the people that are implementing and using our money. The Pentagon has failed 6 audits in a row. All of that stuff is on our backs. And that's why the middle class is shrinking, the wealth disparity is growing, and the rich, the 1% of our country's population, owns over 60% of the resources. Now, the stock market lost $2 trillion just in one day. That was just yesterday with the announcements of the tariffs. Tell me someone that you think is probably going to be immune from the tariffs. That's going to be the 1% because there's workarounds. There's going to be bailouts. There's going to be subsidies. But you know who's not going to get bailed out? Us. We heard this garbage about everyone's going to receive $5,000 for, what are they, like a check, right? A $5,000, I'm forgetting the word. Has anybody gotten any money? Has anybody made any money from any of the wars or anything else? That's going into the pockets of the industrial complex. That is money that the lobbyists are taking, and the lobbyists are returning back into campaigns. And this is why people are getting picked up from the streets and being taken away into unknown locations by masked men that honestly probably don't even work with the government. Why are they hiring private contractors abroad and here? Because they don't have to adhere to the same rules. They can pretty much do whatever they want to. And then when there's legal consequences, they get bailed out. They get saved. They get pardoned, which we have seen time and time again. So look, we want to talk about Sharia law. Let's talk about it. Let's whatever. We can discuss it, okay? Whether you think it's good or bad, whatever. That's a moot point. The Sharia law, from my understanding, one law of Sharia law is you must follow the law of the land. Nobody is saying that you need to come in with Sharia law and you need to do this or do that. That's all fear-mongering. Forget about whatever those details, because in the end of the day, it's against the Constitution. It prevents the Constitution. Okay, but there are areas that you have a certain religious group, you have ambulances, you have police, you have a full-on network, you have groups that have opened communities all within their name. That can be minority religious groups, and that's okay. But now when it's coming to things like the Epic City in Texas, when it's coming to anywhere where there can be some rise in power or just some moves, it doesn't matter on merit. It doesn't matter about the resume. It doesn't matter about it doesn't matter about academia. But you know what matters? The color of people's skin, the origin of the people, the religion of the people. So you got to tell me, with everything that I showed you, with the debt at now $36 trillion, the performances, the intricate performances of Doge or Cory Booker or any of these idiots that are accepting AIPAC money, that are taking money from a foreign government, you got to ask yourself, why would there be fear-mongering? Read between the lines. Ask yourself who has benefited the most. And tell me why Zios like Madeleine Albright are saying that 500,000 children being unalived, it's a very hard choice, but the price is worth it. If you're okay with that, if you're happy with having that on your morality, if you're having that to be good on your conscience, then you're a piece of shit just like them. But this is ridiculous. And I'm sick and tired of hearing about this Sharia law fear-mongering, because it can't happen. It's not legally possible. The land grabs, the growth, the taking of our tax dollars, where is this money going? Why? Think about that, you guys. Get off of the smoke screens, get off of the gaslighting, and ask yourself, use your brains. Why are they doing this? It's all for our money. It's all for leverage. They're using our money, other people's money, for their causes. Happened with Halliburton, Dick Cheney, happened with Bush. These guys are privatizing their public resources for themselves. The pharmaceutical industry does it. They use our money for research and then privatize these companies for their benefit. All right, guys, I want to talk.
Here's a Muslim leader in Chicago.
Repeat this enough, where we don't have this aqidah concept firm in our minds that Islam did not come to coexist.
Okay. Good to know.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Islam لا يعلى. Islam يعلو ولا يعلى عليه. And Islam is raised high and nothing is raised above Islam. We can't think of Islam that it came to live with these other religions, in the sense that Islam is a religion amongst those religions, and they have a share with the truth. And they have a share of justice. And they have a share of, this worship of Allah, the correct worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Islam came to correct all of that. Islam came to remove the oppression of all those religions. And it is the only truth. And it is the only way to justice.
The only truth,
Here's a
America
the American government, secularism, democracy, capitalism, these are cancers that have spread their illness all over the world. In America and in the Middle East. In America over here, people have the freedom to, again, like I said before, commit zina, do os fahisha, but when you speak up, it's a problem. Non-Muslims are tired of this cancer. They're tired of the American government. They're tired of democracy. They want to see a new way of life.
No.
As Muslims, we have to understand that we have that new way of life. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was sent.
You know what? This is so backwards. The real cancer is Islam. And wherever it goes, so does war. And if this cancer is not treated, it will spread. Just like it has in London and throughout Europe, they have been completely taken over in their government. Churches are being burnt down. People are being persecuted. And yes, there is a difference between peaceful Muslims and Islamic Muslims and extremists and terrorists. However, we are not going to allow the peaceful ones to be the reason why we don't stand up against Islam. We need to be courageous during these times. We need to be American crusaders, and we need to be crusaders of our faith.
Allahu Akbar. Sami Allahu liman hamidah. Rabbana lakal hamd. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar.
I mean, at what point did freedom of religion mean blocking streets and bothering the public and beginning to impose the same ideas that are leading to sides throughout the world?
So being that Dearborn has been in the news recently, I wanted to get on here and just tell everyone that I was raised 10 minutes from Dearborn. I spent a lot of time in Dearborn, and I know what goes on in Dearborn. So coming from somebody who was raised right outside of Dearborn, spent a lot of time in that city, I will tell you that what you are hearing is absolutely true. Now there's two parts of Dearborn, the east side and the west side. The west side is about 50% Christian, 50% Muslim. The east side is about 90% Muslim, if not more. The east side is where you hear that mayor saying that he's putting that street up named after a tea organization or somebody that was a tea. Yes, that is the east side by Warren Avenue. So as a woman that grew up 10 minutes from Dearborn and spent the majority of my time in that area growing up, I will tell you that a woman cannot walk down the street in East Dearborn and not get harassed in some way or even spit on. I've seen friends of mine get spit on for not covering their hair and their face. You will not pass a building that is not written in Arabic. You cannot read anything. It's like being in a third world country. Now I know that there'll be pushback on this video and people will say that's not true. You know, American women can walk down the street in Dearborn. Well, I'm telling you right now that it is absolutely true. And I have several times walked down the street in Dearborn and been harassed. My friends have been spit on. And it happens every day down there. And another thing, I remember growing up, you know, after 9/11, driving down the street, actually on Warren Avenue in Dearborn, and everyone, all of these Muslims lined up on the street, cheering and screaming, beeping their horns. They were celebrating it, and that is exactly what they were doing. So yes, what you're hearing about Dearborn is absolutely true. Yes, it is.
It is so true that it doesn't look like it is in America. The stores and the products that they sell there are not American, neither is the language, and hey, neither are the people who are going in government. If only when these refugees came here and assimilated, there wouldn't be any issues. But the problem is that they are trying to keep the same ideologies and philosophies from the places that they escaped from.
I don't even want to go to work today. They're trying to paint Dearborn. Elon Musk, he tweeted out or shared out this post trying to act like Muslims in Dearborn are like trying to take over the world or something. Like they're really trying to push out this message. And I know,
well, I mean, it is true.
that somebody is going to get out there and they're going to do something to people in Dearborn, and y'all are just trying to, like, this hate, it just makes me not even want to wear my hijab, and my son is in Dearborn right now.
Wow, America making you want to assimilate to America. Well, I mean, this is where you live. Wouldn't it make sense that if you want to live in a Muslim community, you would live in a Muslim community, in a Muslim country, instead of trying to make every other community also Muslim community, so that way you don't feel scared. And God forbid anybody would actually hurt these people. I mean, she seems like just an innocent woman, you know, who was probably raised in that religion, and nobody wants to inflict harm on her. However, when she is a part of a religion that has these extremist groups that are committing terror in the masses, are we supposed to feel bad for the crocodile tears? Maybe. We're being dramatic, but we are not, because the more that communities throughout our country look like this, the closer to home that it is getting, and the closer to them trying to force it on us it is getting. This is Philadelphia. Again, why aren't they practicing inside and instead they're practicing in a park? Because they want you to see it. They want your families to see it. The kids that are playing soccer, they want to be like, hey, this is the religion, practice it. They're going to force it on you by the sword, because that is what their religion tells them to do. If they hate America so much and they rather live a lifestyle like a Islamic country, then why are they here? I find it great that they have banned Sharia law in Texas.
Governor Abbott, flanked by lawmakers who pushed through HB 4211 in response, they say, to Epic City, a Muslim-centric community planned on the edge of Collin County, accused of housing discrimination.
This law prevents them from creating no-go zones. It prevents them from selling or renting land only to people who follow Islam.
Collin County State.
I mean, we need more bravery like these mayors. I cannot imagine how many mean messages they received or threats, because standing up for American culture and for our country is apparently worse than these people threatening us.
And then making laws that act as the sword, the Islamophobia law in Canada, M103.
Yeah.
Muslim Brotherhood.
I find that there are only two things which are open to our movements: ballot or bullet, nothing in between.
I used to say that democracy is haram. Now I say participation in democracy is our jihad. That's our jihad. We're going to fight not through the bullets, but the ballot.
Going to the ballot and voting is now an obligatory action, fard ayn. And it is a jihad that is now needs to be done, because this is our modern jihad. You can elect a person who wants the Sharia.
Because in the United States, what we do know is that in the past election, just this last election, there have been over 800 Muslim candidates running for office.
We may end up with about 50 members of Congress in the next 6 years. That's really the essence of dismantling the system of injustice, is to replace it with the people who represent the Prophet ﷺ.
The Prophet.
Muslim leader in Chicago.
Repeat this enough, or we don't We don't have this aqidah concept firm in our minds that Islam did not come to coexist.
Okay. Good to know.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Islam Islam لا يعلى. Islam يعلو ولا يعلى عليه. And Islam is raised high and nothing is raised above Islam. We can't think of Islam that it came to live with these other religions in the sense that Islam is a religion amongst those religions and they have a share with the truth. And they have a share of justice. And they have a share of, this worship of Allah, the correct worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Islam came to correct all of that. Islam came to remove the oppression of all those religions. And it is the only truth. And it is the only way to justice.
The only truth, Ken.
You're way too attractive to be wasting your time reading. Here, put these on.
You're an Islamophobe. And although you live here, I want you to know as mayor, you're not welcome here. And the day you move out of the city will be the day that I launch a parade celebrating the fact that you moved out of the city. Because you are not somebody who believes in coexistence.
So there's a viral video out of the city of Dearborn, Michigan, where you have the mayor of Dearborn, a guy called Abdullah Hamoud, going after a resident of that particular city, saying that he's a racist, he's an Islamophobe, he's not welcome in Dearborn, Michigan, and in fact, the day that this individual leaves Dearborn, Michigan, he will throw a parade in honor of this evil white racist bigot leaving the city. And this is usually the clip that you'll see. In fact, if you go to the local news reports, this is the main highlight of the exchange. However, what you don't see, and oftentimes you have described for you, which I find very questionable, is what the guy said, what he was upset about, and what he actually did in order to set off the mayor of Dearborn. Because in reality, what this is a dispute over the naming of a specific street to a journalist that happens to be in and around the area. And to be clear and to be 100% fair to the city of Dearborn, they're not actually the ones who named this street after this individual. It's actually Wayne County that made the decision. However, the sign resides in Dearborn, so this is why it was brought up in this particular context. But what I find incredibly interesting, what I find incredibly compelling when you go to the city council full video, is the thing that set the mayor off was not anything that should be considered evil white racism or Islamophobia, that made up term for whenever you criticize Islam for legitimate or even illegitimate reasons. It's actually the fact that this guy brought to this particular city council meeting quotes about the individual from himself, and he criticized those quotes. So what's Islamophobia is criticizing the fact that you're naming a street after somebody who called for violence not just in the Palestinian territories, not just in Lebanon, but specifically in Michigan. Again, he called for the Islamic takeover of Michigan in a place like Dearborn, and based on the mayor's reaction, what we can see for ourselves is that appears to be exactly what happened. Again, you're not allowed in this guy's city if you dare speak up about Islam. You're not allowed in this guy's city if you dare criticize one of their figures, even if they're calling for violence in multiple quotes. That's just a good journalist, and you need to shut up and take it, because guess what? You're not welcome here anymore. And this is what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to play you the entire exchange that went down, or at least huge chunks of it, so you could see for yourself the kind of energy that the citizen was bringing versus the mayor of the city, who again is supposed to not only tolerate but permit freedom of speech, and how angry he got in response to hearing the quotes of possibly one of his own idols. But before we get into that, I want to thank everybody who supports this channel via actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
I feel like having that sign up there, it's almost like having, maybe a street, Hezbollah Street or Hamas Street. Hezbollah, bombed the embassy in Beirut, and including many Americans. So I just feel it's quite inappropriate.
You're an Islamophobe. And although you live here, I want you to know as mayor, you are not welcome here. And the day you move out of the city will be the day that I launch a parade celebrating the fact that you moved out of the city. Because you are now somebody who believes in coexistence.
So the clips played in the local news, and by the way, in news agencies all across the country, go as you just saw right there. You have the individual saying this would be like naming a street Hezbollah Street or naming it Hamas Street. Remember, these are the people that bombed our embassy in Beirut, and it's unacceptable. And then you have the mayor coming down and saying Islamophobia, Islamophobia, you are Islamophobia. How dare you with your Islamophobia, as if there wasn't way more to this exchange. And by the way, as if the mayor wasn't angry at this individual in particular for other criticisms of him and Islam in the past, which again, in the United States of America, you are not only entitled to do, but you're supposed to be respected when you do so by government officials. But this guy wants to punish this member of the city, this regular ass citizen, for daring to question Islam. Because guess what? Dearborn, Michigan, majority Muslim city, and they don't tolerate your rights, your American idea of what freedom is once they're in the majority.
I'm sure he's done a lot of good things for the community, starting the Arab American News. But one thing I'm very concerned about, which I think a lot of people in Dearborn would be concerned about, I mean, I could just read his direct quotations. I'll read a couple of them. These are from 2022. So, yeah, he talks about how
Can you tell us what the issue is?
Yeah,
Before we
Councilman
start
Abraham.
reading things, can you just tell us what your concern is?
Yeah, my concern is he's a promoter of Hezbollah and Hamas.
So this guy comes in, he talks about his concerns with this particular street, and then he says he's going to pull up his direct quotations. And again, this is what they're actually angry about. This is what they're upset about. The fact that he's quoting the guy that has his name plastered on a street in their city. And of course, before he even gets ready with the quote, they start saying, what's your issue? Just tell us what your issue is. Tell us what your problem is. Don't quote this guy. Don't actually tell people what he believes, because we find that to be Islamophobic. Again, when you quote a guy's own statement, somebody that they're portraying as a journalist, somebody that they're portraying as this neutral truth teller, that is the issue right there. So already you could tell that they know what's happening over at this city council. They know what time it is, and they're trying to cut that off any way humanly possible. So again, pay attention to the fact that the city council of Dearborn, Michigan does not want these quotations read. They don't want this on the record. They don't want people to see this. And ironically, the fact that they had this ridiculous reaction to this guy speaking out about this street, you end up in a situation where the city council meeting that had 900 views at the time that I'm recording this video had gained significantly more traction than it would have otherwise, based on the fact that you had the mayor freak out and everybody trying to give him applause. And of course, almost nobody is going to look into the real clips, but I did. I'm pulling this up. I'm bringing this up so you could see and hear for yourself.
There's lots of quotes, but just a couple of quotes here. He talks about how the blood of the martyrs, I'm quoting, irrigates the land of Palestine. And then further quotes, he talks about how the terrorists should strike them with knives and with their bare hands, and they're victorious. And he also encourages the use of rockets over there. And then another quote from 2022, "We are the Arabs who are going to lift Palestinians all the way to victory, whether we are in Michigan and whether we are in Jenin." So the reason why I mentioned this is that it sounds like he could be inciting violence in Michigan. "Believe me," I'm continuing the quotation. He says, "Believe me."
He's not. I just want to be clear. He can speak for himself.
Well, this is
I'm
speaking for himself.
going to stop you because he's not a violent person.
So look, we should not be surprised by the calls for terrorism, by the calls for violence in the Middle East. Honestly, that is standard operating procedure, especially now post October 7th, but it was prior to October 7th where these quotes come from, but I also find it fascinating that he ends up bringing in a quote where they talk about we are the Arabs and we are going to liberate Palestine and we're going to do it over there. I forgot the nation or whatever area that he said, but we're also going to bring it to Michigan. And then he says it sounds like he's inciting violence in places like Michigan, and immediately they then cut him off, and then they start talking about how during his time to speak, during his time to ask questions to the city council that allegedly represents him, he's not allowed to characterize these quotes. He can read them, although they're going to try to stop him from doing that, and they've been trying to stop them from doing that, but he can't interpret them. He can't say what he thinks about them. He can't describe them as inciting violence because for whatever reason, they have decided in this Sharia court that is masquerading as a city council meeting that he is not able to actually give his opinion or give his statements because guess what? They're in the majority over in Michigan, so therefore you don't get to criticize their promotion of any individual figure. So now they're going to participate in mind reading. They're going to say he didn't mean that when he said we the Arabs are going to liberate Palestine from over there, you know, the Palestinian territories, all the way to Michigan. We're going to do this work. We're going to fight with any means that we can depending on the situation. No, sir, you are not allowed to interpret that at all whatsoever. You're an Islamophobe. You're a bigot. Also, you're not welcome in the city because we have decided that because the government that allegedly works for you is now giving you the orders.
And you can interpret his words any way you want, but I will guarantee you he is not intending to incite violence anywhere in the world.
Well,
he could defend himself if he were here, but
sure,
we're not going to allow personal attacks in our community.
So again, it's just not true that he's not trying to incite violence anywhere in the world. He obviously is doing so. Now you can say you're allowed to call for violence in other parts of the world. You're allowed to make general calls for violence. That is protected by the First Amendment. And by the way, for those of you who think that that is not the case, how many people have you heard that want the United States of America to target the drug cartels in Mexico or in international waters off the coast of Venezuela? Those are general calls to violence, general calls to actions that are 100% protected, but you're not going to tell me that this guy isn't calling for violence anywhere when he's saying fight back with knives, fight back with fists, fight back any way that you can, again, depending on the situation, including by firing rockets. And again, if you want to set aside everything about the Middle East, which would be lovely, it would be nice to not talk about that particular conflict for once in, the last 2 years, I'm totally on board with that. I'm totally fine with that. If you want to just focus on the United States of America, if you want to just focus on Dearborn, Michigan, that's the part that this guy was going to get to before they said that he is not allowed to engage in personal attacks on a person that the county named a street after. He's not allowed to read this person's quotes because those are personal attacks, even though this is an obvious signal to where this guy wants people to go.
Okay, well, I mean, I'm just reading his words here.
That's fine, but you're interpreting his words after you read them. He did not use the word violence, did he?
Well, may I continue the rest of the quote?
Well, if you say you want to read them, you can read them. If you want to interpret and give your own opinion of what he's thinking, that's a different story.
Okay.
Who the hell is this absolute dope to say that, oh, he didn't say the word violence, he didn't utter that specific word in any of the quotes or the quote that you just read, therefore you're not allowed to interpret it. Therefore, you're not allowed to have command over the English language, be able to read these words that are written in the English language, and then determine what you think those words mean. That would be absolutely horrible. That would be absolutely terrible. How dare you actually have reading comprehension? This guy is above reproach in Dearborn, Michigan.
Sure. I mean, I'd love to discuss this. I just want to finish the quote because there's more. Okay, I'll continue. Whether we are in Michigan and whether we are in Jenin, believe me, everyone should fight within his means. They will fight with stones. Others will fight with guns. Others will fight with planes, drones, and rockets. Others will fight with their voices, and others will fight with their hands and say, "Free, free Palestine." So I just find it very concerning.
And there you have it. There you have the real reason why they didn't want him to finish out this particular quote. Because he's like, you have to fight with guns, you have to fight with fists, you have to fight with airplanes. Again, not exactly the kind of imagery that you want being mentioned in and around the anniversary of September 11th at your city council meeting. And this is exactly what they didn't want him to say. This is exactly what he didn't want him to speak at this city council meeting. And this is all the things that set the stage for the mayor to go off on this rant about how this guy's difference of opinion, this guy's freedom of speech, makes him an evil white racist who's not welcome in the city of Dearborn, Michigan.
If you'd like to step forward.
I think the only comment I'm going to make, 'cause I'm not
Mayor?
looking for a rebuttal, is
Welcome to Alteryx One, a self-service analytics platform that makes it easy to automate analytics at scale and enable.
the best suggestion I have for you is to not drive on Warren Avenue, or to close your eyes while you're doing it. His name is up there, and I spoke at a ceremony celebrating it because he's done a lot for this community.
So this is what ultimately leads to the mayor speaking up about this particular individual. He tells him at first, again, not included in the clip, that he shouldn't go down that particular street, that he doesn't care that there's criticism of him as the mayor for being at the ceremony where they unveiled this sign. And he also says, maybe close your eyes while you're driving there because you're a stupid citizen. You are under our rule. You don't get a say anymore. You had to get a say before these people became the majority. And then he goes off on him for his speech related to Islam, again, as a city council member. And he explains how his speak against Islam makes him not welcome in the city of Dearborn, Michigan.
And I think it's quite hypocritical to know that you're approaching this podium when you yourself have videos on YouTube standing in front of my mosque saying the cruelest of things about Muslims, about the religion of Islam, because you are a bigot and you are a racist and you are an Islamophobe. And although you live here, I want you to know as mayor, you are not welcome here. And the day you move out of the city will be the day that I launch a parade celebrating the fact that you moved out of the city, because you are not somebody who believes in coexistence. You're somebody who tries to preach it, but in fact you do everything but that. So I just want to put that on the record.
Okay, Mr. Clerk, I know that you're back on the mic. One second. Sir, yes, go ahead. State your name and address.
God bless you, Mayor. God bless you, sir.
I think
Thank you.
also say that I'm an apostate, I'm going to hell based on the videos that you dropped. So if I were you, I'd sit silent.
So after he gives his grandstanding statement, we also hear a bit more of the exchange where you have the citizen says, God bless you and whatnot. And then, of course, the mayor gets angry and he says, oh, you say I'm an apostate and I'm going to hell. So if I were you, I would just stay silent. If I were you, I would just shut up, because this is not the United States of America, at least not in Dearborn, Michigan. So yeah, that is the whole context of the entire exchange. Now, of course, you can look up this particular person's YouTube channel. I have not been able to find it for myself. You can review his videos. You could determine if he's actually guilty of the sin of Islamophobia. But the fact is, you have a politician, a mayor, saying that your criticism of Islam makes you unwelcome in an American city. And I find that to be ridiculous. And by the way, had this been a Christian religious politician that had this particular stance, I would find it equally ridiculous. Had this been a Jewish politician, and let's say you have a nearly majority or all Jewish town or all Jewish city council, and they made these particular claims, that would also be ridiculous. But you know what? Those are just my thoughts. I want to know what you guys think down in the comments below. As per usual, if you like this video, show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on my social media, support me via the support links in the description.
See, I told you it works.
Yeah, but does it work for someone who's in $20,000 debt? What about $50,000 in debt?
Yeah, it works.
A contentious battle is brewing in Dearborn over a mosque using outdoor loudspeakers for their call to prayer.
In Dearborn, Michigan, right here in the United States of America, a city that has become majority Arabic, about 55% of their population is Arabic. The religious figures are a little bit more difficult to pin down due to the fact that the census doesn't actually collect religious data, but we can assume a huge portion of that is an Islamic population. Residents who have lived there for a long time, Americans who have been there for generations, are getting woken up at 5:30 in the morning morning, and by the way, all hours of the day, due to the fact that a local mosque is playing on the loudspeaker an Islamic call to prayer. That's right, here in the United States of America, the so-called secular republic that we are, residents who live in and around a mosque have to be greeted each and every morning with this obnoxious Islamic call to prayer because, of course, once Muslims get to a certain percentage, once they get to a majority, they start reshaping society around them in order to cater to their religious beliefs, and they completely discard the host country that they're in. And this is what we're going to talk about today, because the local news media adds a little bit of ambiguity to the situation. They try to say, well, there's an argument from this side and there's an argument from that side, but in reality, when you actually look at the legislation in question, when you actually see what's going on and you hear the complaints from the regular, ordinary, non-Islamic residents of this area, what you find out is that they're 100% right, the mosque is 100% wrong, and there have already been extreme measures taken in order to calm this nonsense down. However, the Muslims are not interested in complying because, again, when they're in the minority, they ask for freedom because that's according to your values, but when they're in the majority, they rule over you and take away freedom because that's according to their values. And this is what we're going to talk about today. But before we do, I want to thank everybody who supports this channel via actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
I spoke to the director of the Dearborn Community Center. This is the mosque being criticized for the use of its loudspeaker for its call to prayer. The director tells me this has been an ongoing complaint from a small minority in the community, and he insists no rules are being broken.
Yeah, this is crazy. We don't want to bother anybody.
So they open up with a guy over at the mosque and he says, look, we don't want to bother anyone. We're not trying to infringe on anybody's morning. We're just trying to peacefully practice our religion in Dearborn, Michigan. And in reality, in actuality, the implication of what this guy's saying is that there's some Islamophobia going on. And what you really need to do is shut up with your Islamophobia. Now, unlike many other creators who talked about the previous story out of Dearborn, Michigan, where the mayor of Dearborn told a Christian resident that he was not allowed to be in Dearborn, that he was unwelcome there, that he was a racist Islamophobe. Let me play that for you right here.
The best suggestion I have for you is to not drive on Warren Avenue, or to close your eyes while you're doing it. His name is up there, and I spoke at a ceremony celebrating it because he's done a lot for this community. And I think it's quite hypocritical to know that you're approaching this podium when you yourself have videos on YouTube standing in front of my mosque saying the cruelest of things about Muslims, about the religion of Islam, because you are a bigot and you are a racist and you are an Islamophobe. And although you live here, I want you to know as mayor, you are not welcome here. And the day you move out of the city will be the day that I launch a parade celebrating the fact that you moved out of the city, because you are not somebody who believes in coexistence. You're somebody who tries to preach it, but in fact you do everything but that. So I just want to put that on the record.
Rather than just rely on the characterization of the local news report, I actually went to the Dearborn City Council YouTube page, pulled the entire interaction, and what I found out in that particular case is what made this person an Islamophobe was that he actually brought quotes of the person that he was criticizing that they decided to name a street after. And included in those quotes was this person calling for Muslims to fight absolutely everywhere in the world, including Michigan, fight with knives, fight with fists, fight with planes, which clearly and obviously was a call to violence.
Okay, well, I mean, I'm just reading his words here.
That's fine, but you're interpreting his words after you read them. He did not use the word violence, did he?
Well, may I continue the rest of the quote?
Well, if you say you want to read them, you can read them. If you want to interpret and give your own opinion of what he's thinking, that's a different story.
Okay. Sure, I mean, I'd love to discuss this. I just want to finish the quote because there's more. Okay, I'll continue. Whether we are in Michigan and whether we are in Jenin, believe me, everyone should fight within his means. They will fight with stones, others will fight with guns, others will fight with planes, drones, and rockets. Others will fight with their voices, and others will fight with their hands and say, "Free, free Palestine."
Hey business owner, tired of wasting hours on scheduling, attendance, and payroll? ConnectTeam's here to simplify all of that for you. With ConnectTeam's auto scheduling, your schedules practically fill themselves. handling conflicts and tracking availability while updating the right people about changes and keeping labor costs in check. But great schedules need more than just time slots, so add tasks, forms, and checklists that ease communication, making sure your team isn't just showing up, they're getting the job done. When your employees clock in and out, everything syncs automatically to their timesheets, so all the hours you spent matching times and fixing mistakes are yours again. And when it's payroll time, simply export the timesheets to your accountant or payroll provider, and that's it. Ready to get hours of your day back? Go to connectteam.com and make it happen.
So I just find it very concerning.
And by the way, it was not just the mayor in that particular instance that went after this resident, this local Christian in and around this area. It was actually other members of the city council who told him that while he was allowed to read quotes from the person who, again, they've named a street after, he wasn't actually allowed to characterize those quotes as a call for violence, because in reality, in actuality, when you have this many Muslims controlling your city council, your rights to freedom of speech only are in effect when you're criticizing other people and definitely not Muslims. Now, none of that was included in the local news media report that covered that previous story, so I thought it would be smart of me to pull the actual section of this particular city council meeting so we can get the full interaction. And what we actually hear is that despite what the local news is trying to portray about a community looking for compromise, about this being a back and forth, but in reality, probably the Muslims aren't doing anything, and in reality there's probably some Islamophobia going on right in Dearborn, Michigan, maybe some evil white racism. What we discover is that the city council fully admits that they've already taken extreme measures in order to address the noise problems. However, they refuse to stop blasting this prayer at 5:30 in the morning.
I've been coming to the Federation, the committee, and the council meetings for 2 years now to address the enforcement of the noise ordinance, which states it is unlawful to permit unreasonably loud, disturbing, unusual, unnecessary noise, which a noise disturbs, injures, or endangers the comfort, repose, health, peace, or safety of others within the limits of the city. 2 years ago, a council member sought to change the noise ordinance to permit the mosque to use loudspeakers to play the call to prayer multiple times daily. This change was not passed at the council meeting, but the mosques in East Dearborn are now at times waking us up at 5:30 in the morning with the call to prayer, and at other times forcing us to listen to the prayer in our yard and in our own home. With our signed petition, my neighbors and I are asking for the respect to live peacefully in our own homes, as no permission was given by the city council to allow outdoor playing of the call to prayer. For the last 40 years, the call to prayer was either indoors, or at times it was printed, or it was on the app. What changed that they felt permission was given? The noise complaints have been made out, and the police have made numerous visits.
As I've said multiple times, there is no change in ordinance for any religion, for any noise ordinance to do whatever they want or amplify sound and impede on someone else's life and enjoyment of their property, which I've been consistent for 3 years with you on that. So I totally agree with you, and we have found instances where they have violated it, and we have been going there, so on and so forth. So we're going to have to come with a resolve that's going to be final. As you know, as I spoke at the last meeting, the officers went there, marked a mark for the level of the volume on the unit, took the knob off.
So think about how absurd what you just heard right there actually is. According to the Muslim member of the city council, again, somebody who's trying to minimize the situation, somebody who is totally on board with targeting a random citizen in the previous city council meeting, they've actually addressed this in multiple different and including extreme ways, like sending law enforcement to these local mosques, having them actually break off the dial for the volume on the loudspeaker so that these people can't turn it up, because despite the fact that they've given them warning after warning for years, they actually have not done it. So obviously, this is very much an extreme problem in Dearborn, Michigan. They've had to take all these different measures in order to address it, and whether or not this is a violation of their noise ordinance, to me, is not even worth talking about, because it so clearly is. It's so clearly a violation that there's no conversation nor debate to be had about this, because while there are limits during the daytime hours of how loud, and thus that becomes a question of the decibel levels of this particular loudspeaker during the day, between the hours of 10 p.m. and 7 a.m., you actually can't play these loudspeakers at all. So there's 0 decibel level that is acceptable from these speakers, and yet the regular ordinary residents of Dearborn, Michigan are greeted with Islamic calls to prayer at 5:30 in the morning. Last time I checked, and again, I'm not a scientist, I've never been an expert on nuclear physics, 7 a.m. is actually later than 5:30 a.m., therefore, this should be a violation, and yet it is still years in a debate. It's still years in played as this both sides issue on the local news media, when in reality, it's anything but a both sides issue. It's exactly an issue of Islamic populations deciding that the rules don't apply to them, that Islam takes precedent over absolutely everything, and that is what the regular ordinary residents of Dearborn, Michigan are experiencing. And again, when you look at their mayor, the guy who says you're not welcome here if you criticize Islam, who can be surprised that these people feel emboldened in Dearborn, Michigan?
But the mosques in East Dearborn are now at times waking us up at 5:30 in the morning with a call to prayer.
This is Dearborn resident Andrea Unger at last night's City Council meeting, stating that mosques using outdoor loudspeakers for their call to prayer should not be allowed, and says she believes it's not supposed to be allowed per city ordinance.
The noise complaints have been made out and the police have made numerous visits. What is the next step?
Council President Mike Serini during the meeting pointed out that police have investigated and gathered decibel tests from certain mosques. Nabil Bahalwan, the director of the Dearborn Community Center, says police visited his site and was told his loudspeaker was not too loud.
And then the city came in, the inspector, there is a monitoring for the voice. We are even below the average of the rules.
But again, at last night's City Council meeting, there was some question whether or not any outdoor loudspeakers are allowed, something that was not clarified.
Again, this is why it's extraordinarily important for you guys to actually pull up these local meetings, actually look up the interaction in question, because they paint it to be like some kind of investigation that's ongoing, and honestly, like the guy who's at the mosque says, oh, we're actually below the average of the noise level, so therefore it's up in the air. But in reality, the ordinance that covers noise goes from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m., so it's not even an issue of decibel levels at that point in time. And in addition to that, there was a specific motion at the Dearborn City Council in order to exempt Islamic cultural centers or mosques from playing their loudspeaker call to prayer, and that was voted down.
But again, at last night's City Council meeting, there was some question whether or not any outdoor loudspeakers are allowed, something that was not clarified.
As I've said multiple times, there is no change in ordinance for any religion, for any noise ordinance to do whatever they want or amplify sound and impede on someone else's life.
So this is completely not permitted, and again, it is religiously neutral. This applies to churches who don't engage in such nonsense most of the time, and any other kind of religious institution. However, there's one institution that has decided that they take precedent over absolutely everything. There's one religion in this particular area that thinks that the laws and rules don't apply to them, and again, they've been emboldened by their mayor in order to believe that.
Only that more evidence is being gathered, but CBS Detroit did examine Dearborn's noise ordinance and found that loudspeakers between the hours of 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. are in violation of the ordinance. Meantime, Bahalwan says he does not believe this mosque is violating any ordinance. However, he is concerned that some residents aren't happy.
Again, why is CBS Detroit framing it this way? Why are they talking about an investigation and whether or not this was allowed when there was a specific law that was up for a vote that would have allowed this, and guess what? It was voted down. The answer to this question, obviously from this very interaction is no. However, CBS is sprinkling a lot of ambiguity on it as if we don't understand exactly what's going on. And here's the crazy thing about all of this. The Muslim population in the United States of America, and I can't speak to Dearborn specifically because again, they've gotten to a majority and obviously things change above a certain percentage, is like the best Muslim population in any Western country. If you compare them to the UK or France or whatever, what you find out is that we have a much more chill, much more moderate Muslims. And honestly, if you go to a regular, ordinary Muslim neighborhood like in New York, chances are you'll have a good time. Chances are you'll meet some friendly people. Chances are you will feel like, okay, I'm basically in the Arabic version of Little Italy. So, you know, it's not really that big of a deal. But
Charlie Kirk was unalive today. Let's talk about it. I absolutely hated the guy. Yes, we had differences, a lot of differences of opinions. Frankly, he hated me too. We never met each other, but we hated each other. And the sad part is I hated him because of his views, but he hated me just because I existed. If you guys have heard Charlie Kirk speak about Muslims, you guys would know that he absolutely hated Muslims. He was a xenophobe and an Islamophobe, a very proud one. He was loud and proud about it. As a matter of fact, he got paid to do it, and he accepted, and gladly he ran with it. He called Islam a cancer. He said Islam is not compatible with Western values. He said a bunch of other bullshit, okay? Islam worships Satan, so on and so forth, okay? So I don't give a shit that he's gone, because frankly speaking, actions have consequences, and it's not out who did it yet. I know they got a white guy, but then they said it's not him, and the thing is still at large. Of course, this is going to be pinned on a Muslim guy, of course. But let me tell you, when people are telling me or saying, hey, guess what, man? You know, we can't, as much as we disagree with each other, we can't go unaliving each other, man. That's not right. That's political violence should never be tolerated. Okay, cool. I could list an entire list, okay, for you right now for international crimes, okay? Iraq, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Libya, Yemen, Syria, Lebanon, Palestine, Egypt, Qatar. The list goes on and on. I could talk about international issues all day long, but we're not going to do that. Even though the reason became from weapons of mass destruction to it turned into, well, they hate us for our religious freedoms real quickly. But let's not talk about international. Let's keep it domestic. Why were we, America, beating the shit and pepper spraying students on a college campus because of their political viewpoints? Why were we deporting students because of their political viewpoints? Why were we arresting American citizens because of their op-eds and their political views? Why are we making it a crime in this country to criticize a certain country? It's not, you guys know what I'm talking about? Why is it a crime to do that? Why are veterans getting arrested because they're protesting during a politician's speech? Okay, no matter where it is. Why is Mike Johnson saying anybody who stands up and boos or criticizes Netanyahu on his visit next week will be arrested? Why are we doing that? What do you call all that shit? Is that not political violence? Is that not, like, what are we doing here? You know, this is absolute hypocrisy at the highest level. On one side, you're saying, guys, let's keep it civil. But on the other side, you got a president who's pardoning the January 6th rioters, who's basically saying, fight! What the fuck do you think that means? Oh, no, the fight, it's symbolic. Shut the fuck up. No, it's not. It's literally what it sounds like. ICE is literally ripping families apart. They're literally doing the shittiest things. Okay, all for what? A fucking bonus. And it's crazy. The country is more divided probably than it's ever been, ever. And it's because of people like Charlie Kirk that have continued that problem. They're not part of the solution. They want to continue that problem to divide. And that's how they're stealing our tax dollars. Burn in hell. Toodles. Hey, by the way, now that you're gone, you're going to meet the creator. The truth will prevail. So let me know if you see Satan up there.